It all comes down to
Acknowledge me!
every single time. It's how I can make that prediction. Very soon, people that you thought were based are going to turn out not to be. How can I make that prediction so accurately? Because it comes down to mimetics. Figure out a man's desire, and suddenly he becomes fairly predictable. Not entirely. Hey, sometimes people can surprise you. Sometimes, someone has a real core virtue that you just didn't see. And God bless them for that. But in most cases, that is not the case. In most cases, especially in the media sphere, what people really want is acknowledgement. They want power. They want to be invited to the nice places and talk to the nice people and get on the big shows and not get brought into Pierce Morgan as a punching dummy, as the effigy of all that is wrong, and Pierce will do that. But no, they want to get on the bigger shows and be treated like an equal, a respected equal. Because, you're very respectable, right? You have a degree. You taught at Oxford. Or wherever the heck you did. Then you get booted out for some reason, and you want back in. But you want back in on your terms. You want to be right. I'm right. You're wrong. It's a very powerful motivation. So, brings us to AA. Now, this got brought to me in a GC that Norman here, it's his Christian name, has started producing a whole series of, what is he calling this now? Norman Parvini versus right-wing ideas. This is number 3, nationalism. Done a few of these. If you guys like this when we're done, let me know and I'll do more. Because this, I think, is a classic example of, yet again, you can be right in theory, but wrong in practice. And especially when we get into certain word concept fallacies, you're going to see that it doesn't reach people. It doesn't matter if what you're saying is phonetically correct. And you pick up the dictionary and you point to the word and see, no one uses it that way. No one thinks of it that way, and no one's working in that reality. If you want people to work in that reality, then the job is to get them to work in that reality. That's a whole different kind of set of objectives. So let's get into this, and especially about his concept around nationalism.
Welcome to another edition of Nima Parvini versus right-wing ideas. I am Nima Parvini, and today I'm going to be talking about
Let's see if this,
nationalism and why I've never, in all these years, ever once referred to myself as a nationalist. I have here a book by John Mearsheimer called The Tragedy of Great Power Politics.
Now, again, I'm going to be trying to be as fair as possible. I also have never considered myself a nationalist. However, I don't confuse my personal ideas, beliefs, frame, phronema, all the rest of it with that which should be adopted by others. I don't confuse these two things because I understand that I can set myself apart. That's a personal decision. And one, because of my living situation and who I am and how I am and all the rest of it, makes it an easy one for me. I've always been sort of a mental expat. So living as an expat here in Australia, it makes it even easier. I have to care even less, which is wonderful. But I make also no mistake that just because that's my frame, my way of looking at the world and living, that it should be everyone else's. That'd be silly. You don't be like me. Bad back. Ugh. Constantly irritated. It's not fun.
Note that he doesn't call it tragedy of power politics between nations. That is because all of...
Yeah, he doesn't call it a whole bunch of other things too. Let me know if the volume's okay on this, because it's coming through a little low on my end. And I can probably boost it. Hang on a second here. Let's boost the volume a bit.
The powers he considers in this book were or are empires. All of these books I have behind me are the histories of empires.
This is such a sneaky tactic. It's sneaky, right? It's a wiggle out, right? I don't call myself a nationalist. I call myself an empiricist. Oh, good for you. Do you live in an empire currently there, Norman? Do you really? Is the British Empire still a thing? I say it is, but you're free to disagree. But so he's going to say the American Empire exists, and the Russian Empire exists, and the Chinese Empire exists today. It's a heck of a statement. None of these countries would ever admit to or have ever claimed that they are an empire. They do claim that they are nations or republics or something like that. If you're going to claim that an empire is simply a large, let's say a large region with many different subregions included in it that are all subservient to the main region. So let's say in Russia, well, you have Chechens and many other groups who form part of the Russian Republic. Fair enough. But then that could apply to many places. Canada would be then an empire, if that's your definition of empire. Large landmass, many different groups, and language and ethnic groups, the French and Acadians and many others, natives, etc., all held together under one dominion, right? It's called the Dominion of Canada. So is that the Empire of Canada? Not so much, right? Australia up to the 1960s had dominion over many of the islands here in the Pacific. Do we talk about Australia being an empire? No. Interesting. So right away we're into a word concept fallacy. Now I understand when he says empire, I understand exactly what he means. Yeah, empiricist, the Imperium. Yeah, I understand. I understand that Russia used to be, and I believe would like to be again, an empire. I think that China more or less thinks as an empire, if we want to use that term. The other term we could just use, which is a lot easier, is civilization. Do you have a civilization or don't you? Now, I've said publicly that you no longer live in a civilization. Now, none of us in the West do. The global American empire, or whatever you want to call it, is no longer a civilization. It's a group, it's a function, it's a system, it's a this, it's a that, it's a whatever, sure. But it's not a civilization. It doesn't do what civilizations need to do. Don Browning, $10. Thank you so much. World War II advertisement. Keep mum. Either keep your mouth shut. Yeah. And look, if at the end of the day, if Norman's doing all this because he lives in Britain, and Britain is getting crazy out there, right? It's getting kind of crazy in the UK. And he's just getting ahead of it, saying, hey, whoa. Before you start ascribing all these ideas to me, let me just make very clear how I feel about this, that, and the other thing. I don't blame him for it. Okay? I do not blame him if this is his defense OPSEC. Okay? I do not blame him for it. I don't blame him if he wants to be the new Piers Morgan. I don't blame him or have any ill words for him if this is he thinks that this new tack will get him into the right conversations and be able to feed his family and stuff like that. Don't blame him, have nothing against him for that. However, just keep in mind that many of these same people are not going to give up their right-wing credit cards. Their social credit cards on the right wing, they're not going to sacrifice that. They might get revoked by certain people, but they're going to be held up by the establishment as the new right. Right? Do these people reflect your values? Do these people reflect your ways of thinking? Probably not. And even if you live in Britain, maybe if you live in Britain, but certainly not if you live in America. And fundamentally, it's because these folks, and remember, I'm not saying anything disparaging about Norman the human being, just Norman the character here. The one thing I will say disparaging about it is there are no ethics. There is no ethos here. It's self-serving. It is here to do one purpose and one purpose only, which is to get Norman
Acknowledge me.
acknowledgement, validation, position. That's what it's for. So watch if you want, but keep this in mind.
Because the history of the world is the history of empires. Before I get going here, pick up a course at the academic agency. Promo code SHREDDER gets you 25% off.
You know what? You could easily say the history of the world is the history of religions. You know, yes, empires are one thing. Civilizations can exist with or without an empire. Some of the greatest civilizations on the earth that moved entire continents, that moved entire swaths of history, were not empires. Venice was not an empire. City of London, when we start getting into shipping lanes, we start talking about the Dutch East India Company or the British East India Company. Were they an empire? No. Now, you might attach them to an empire, but the Netherlands were never an empire. Never. Vaguely, if you go back and vaguely attach them to the Holy Roman Empire or something like that, sure. Which was neither holy nor Roman. Discuss. Oy, feeling verklempt. You can attach it to whatever you want, man. The history of mankind is based on, technology. Works. Go buy his course, though. Course, I'm sure it's fantastic.
For all courses, I'll play the ad, and when I come back, I'm going to talk about nationhood and empire. It's promo code.
Right away, we're seeing shorts. We all know what that means. Oops.
Shredder. World-class education denied to you by school, denied to you by woke university. Well, no more. Pick up your course today.
I don't even know what he's using. It's like the world's tiniest, crappiest wood chipper, which he's definitely afraid of. It's got every single guard in the world, right? Look at the safety guards. He's wearing his... And what is this, too? He's wearing shorts, so it's warm enough to wear shorts, apparently, but cold enough to wear a puffy jacket and gloves and just be kind of like, twigs! Oh, the mulch might get up in my face. Are you wearing a screen guard, too? Come on now.
25% off all courses with promo code SHREDDER. That history of the world is the history of empires.
Again, we can say the history of the world is the history of anything we want.
And as such,
history of the world is a history of books. Literacy. History of the world is a history of hats.
Nationalism in the abstract, I believe, is utopian and unrealistic. And I've developed this view over many years. I've listened to a great many self-avowed nationalists, white nationalists, and so on. And it strikes me that their view is unrealistic. For example, what does it mean to be a bell?
I would go on the limb here, tree surgeon, and say that all courses, online courses, are essentially useless now. With AI and Grok and all the rest of it, you can literally go into ChatGPT for free and say, give me a course, design a course for me. And it will just spit one out for you. If it doesn't do it like verbatim, like in a 12-part course, which I'm sure you could get it to do as well, you could have it just have video links and you sit there and watch the videos. All of this stuff is the whole academic revolution, let's say, is done. It's finished. Bye. Not saying the information isn't, but the fact is we have the problem of having too much data. We have way too much data, especially when it gets into commentary. It's basically the bond market, right? You have the derivatives market. So you have bonds that are bought and sold, and that's easy to understand, right? Okay, fine. Commodities, assets, etc. Sure, fine. Then you get into derivatives, and what they can basically do with the bonds themselves and how many times they can sell it and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, this is why it's so screwed. When you add commentary onto information, any data, every single piece of data now has new commentary. So the Politico piece, right? Politico writes an article, and it spawns how many responses to that article? Thousands. Now with AI, it could reach into the millions easily in different languages. Everyone responding to it, everyone giving their hot take. I just did it. New branch of information. And from that information, anyone can branch off that, branch off that, branch off that. So from one node, from one little piece of data, you can have almost infinite amount of responses to that data, to the point where once you add in differentiation and all these other little human things, all of a sudden, by the end of it, you're no longer talking about political. You're talking about something else entirely. But it's still, the root is still there. So when you get into these courses and sort of academic analysis, one, too much ink has been spilled on almost every single basic topic. All you can do is revitalize a topic, bring it back into conversation. You know, AA was big into Carlyle and Yarvin and all the rest of it, and use that to gain ground when a lot of people were looking for answers and looking for answers outside of the mainstream. Me being one of them. Certainly, I still am. The thing is that all my searches led me to orthodoxy, and once I once I got to orthodoxy, I'm like, I don't have to keep looking. I can keep examining and utilizing and using my developing phronema to examine the world and produce content and discussions for you fine folks. But I don't have to keep looking for where are the answers. It's right there. All of it. In fact, every single time I pick up a new thing and reading it and go, oh, this is interesting, and then I kind of cross-reference it back to the church fathers, I find out that there's almost for certain, there is a church father from 1,000 years ago or whatever who said this exact thing, who discussed this concept, or who utilized the Christian frame to predict these kind of outcomes. To a T. Kind of makes everything else redundant, doesn't it? So, Norman here is going to try to make a distinction between empire and nationalism, the idea of nationalism. Now, I happen to agree here that nationalism is born out of that post-Enlightenment and exists in that liberal frame. Don't talk about empires anymore. Empires require monarchs, also require religions, also require distinct and permanent regions and peoples that are defined. The in-group is always the in-group. Rome had a very clear idea of who Romans were. And when they stopped having a clear idea of who Romans were, Rome fell apart. It wasn't a discussion about who, at the high times of Rome, Romans were Romans, and they weren't, they weren't Gauls, for example, or Persians. Keep it in mind. You also need a religion. You need it. Religion, in whatever form it is a repository of tradition. It is how we keep and record tradition and make tradition live in the present and carried out in the future. Tradition is important because it binds people together. It gives them a sense of being, of meaning. Without it, people have no sense of meaning. They have no connection to the past. The present is just what you're doing, and the future becomes very attractive and novel, but it's just a whizzle-wazzle, out there in the wilderness. It's a seed of anxiety, depression, nihilism. You get rid of religion, guaranteed, you no longer have a civilization. Period. I've said there's three things, a regio, right? The regio that binds civilization together, that gives it purpose, is a ruler or a governing system, let's say, a religion, and a region, which includes both a border, land, and a people, culture, language. That which, so we can say it is this and not that. The French civilization is different from the Belgian civilization. They can share certain things. They can share language. They can share religion. They can even share a general region, if you want to talk about Europe. But they have to become distinct. Why? Because without that distinctness, without that differentiation inherent in the system, in the civilization itself, you lose all purpose. You lose all meaning. Someone's saying here, AA may be just going this route to protect his family. Yeah, I've covered that before. Yeah. And, honestly, if that's the reason, then I've said it before. I'll say it again really briefly. I don't. This is not a criticism of Norman, the human being. I'm only criticizing what he's putting out there as content. I don't know the man. I don't know why his I have no insight on his life or his thinking or anything else like that behind the scenes. I only can address what he's putting out there. So this is what I'm doing. You got an inside track on him? Share or not. I don't know. Whatever.
Belgian nationalist.
And the reason why I'm interested in this, sorry, really briefly, the reason why I'm interested in his public positioning is that it's, one, proving my prediction to be true. So, me, I'm right. I'm right, you're wrong. The other thing is that it does change things, right? He's got over 100,000 subscribers. He's very well respected in certain circles, in the dissident right and all these other circles. Or was. He's considered a gatekeeper. He's considered somebody. So when he's changing messaging, he's going to change the messaging of a percentage of people. And all the percentage of people are in your GCs, are vying for political position, all the rest of it. So,
what does it mean to be a nationalist for any small nation? I would argue that today you can only really be a nationalist for the American Empire, which basically means being a neocon. You can be a nationalist for the Russian Empire, which means, supporting Putin. You can be a nationalist for the Chinese Empire, which means getting behind the Communist Party of China. But all other states really do not have a realistic right to nationalism. Any quote-unquote nationalism is afforded by another great power, such as, I would argue, Ukrainian nationalism.
That's nonsense. The Ukrainian nationalism, Ukrainians decried their independence of the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union fell. They did in 1991. Now, speculation, big time speculation, is that the British got in there and supported Ukrainian nationalists. But to be clear, Ukrainian nationalists and the Ukrainian nationalisms from the Bandera kind of ideas, that was still always a small subset within the greater Ukrainian political body. I was a Ukrainian nationalist for a long time. I rubbed noses or rubbed shoulders with serious people who, wanted Ukraine independence and sovereignty above all else. I was in those discussions. So yeah, and I had discussions with people that just kind of put me off early on in my life about anarchy or anarchists, because you start talking to these people and you're like, wow, okay, you guys are a bit crazy. And that's really what was the foundation, the raison d'être, the ideology of Ukrainian nationalists going back into the mid and late 90s, probably early 2000s, probably even today. It's morphed, but originally it was about about ultra anarchism. They were anarchists. Black flag wearing anarchists. Basically, that group that's now split into Azov and Antifa. You follow those tracks back, you get right back to anarchists of the 1990s. All of them. They all share that same ideologies. See? So the problem with nationalism is in its current frame and how he's using it is that nationalism is an ideology onto itself. It's basically a storefront for a operating ideology behind it. Now, the operating ideology might differ. Each nation might have a differing set of idealistic ideals. Classic liberalism, anarchists, communists, fascists, right? Socialist, sure. But that's what it is, right? The Belgian nation. So if you're a Belgian nationalist, what you're really doing is you're projecting your own preferred form of ideology onto the state. And you're saying in many cases, what you're saying is the current state ideology is not serving the people. And you make that distinction because it's a nice little selling technique. The current system is diseased. We're going to replace it with a new system, which is just my system. My group. If you don't like the socialists, we're going to replace them with the fascists. We don't like the fascists, we're going to replace them with the socialists. We're just going to brand them. And in many cases, yeah, fundamentally, the current system might have a set of ideologies, or might be able to be reduced to an ideology. But quite often, when we're seeing this in Europe and why it's being attacked by the extremes, by people who have an actual definable ideology, is that Europe got into too much mush, where you couldn't define what is the European ideology. Vague socialism something. And why? Because of this sort of mushness, and now that it's being attacked by discernible ideologies, it now gives the Europeans the excuse to move into authoritarianism, which is the final form. And authoritarianism is not coded into one set of ideologies, right? It's not just the liberals, it's not just the right or the left. Anyone can be authoritarianism. Anyone, at any time. You just decide to go, you know what? We're going to squash everybody. And that's what's happening.
Clearly funded and fostered by...
Buy my course. I should have a course. No, just buy my course. That's it. Whatever.
NATO against Russia, or Israeli nationalism, which is almost entirely propped up by American power, or
and British power, who invented the state of Israel in the first place. There, Norman. You'll notice, and this is constant, right? If we take two polarizing personalities, you take someone like Tom Luongo, and then you take Norman over here. And you can compare and contrast. Tom goes full in on it's all City of London. It's all the British, right? You can trace back all these problems, both past, present, and future, to the British. And you know what? Honestly, I have a hard time disagreeing. I don't agree with every single thing Tom ever says. I think sometimes he goes a bit too hard to the paint on certain things. I don't have examples, but whatever. But they're minor, they're mild, they're novel. I like Tom. I think Tom's on the mark on 99% of things, and anywhere we disagree, it's like sort of novel shit. So, someone asked, "Is Mironchuck the guy with the Montreal cap?" Yeah, c'est moi. Who is this Mironchuck guy? It's me. If someone's spelling it that way, Bob, it's someone spelling my name phonetically. Miron, as it's spelled, Miron, is pronounced myrrh, like like one of the things they gave Jesus, myrrh, frankincense, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. All right, so myrrh, Mironchuck, Mironchuck. Say it along with me. And if you buy a membership, you can become a Mironchuck. How are we gonna say this? A Mironchad, a Mironchuck, or a Miron. Wait, Mironchuck, Mironchad, or a Mironchuckle, right?
Or Polish nationalism, which again is propped up by American power, is kind of allowed as a frontier.
Mr. Fired Up says, was the Byzantium Empire authoritarianism? Not at first, but certain by the end. It's always authoritarian before its end. Let's put it this way. Legalism, you need laws. Laws are fine, right? Laws are a way to discern when punishments and judgment have to be meted out. But when a society becomes a society of laws, it's lost its meaning. Because generally speaking, that means that the people on the ground, the average citizen of an empire, a civilization, or whatever, that has to be held in by the law, and not by their own sense of moral right and wrong, which should line up to pretty much everyone else's. Chuckle bucks, yes. Phelps, nice to see it back. If you find yourself constantly in moral contradiction or conflict with the civilization you're in, there's a problem. And it's either the civilization's problem or yours. How do you make that discernment? You go to liturgy, talk to a priest. You have to draw on something bigger than you. Something that's been around much, much longer than you. And this is where tradition comes in. And this is also why tradition tends to be the first thing they attack. If I want to destroy your ability to tell right and wrong, to be able to have a discernment between what's happening here is moral or immoral, the first thing I'm going to do is destroy your continuity. And only call it back a la carte. Which is what the academic does. The academic will reach into history and go, I like this, I like that. Oh, look at Carlyle. Let's highlight this. What they fail to understand is that Carlyle, especially if we look at his work on heroism, Carlyle is calling back to tradition. He's trying to be a node within the stream of tradition. He's not trying to be a part of it, be separate from it. He's trying to connect people to it. And that's vital. It's important. Mr. Fired Up says that makes no sense. What makes no sense? Let me know.
Country against the encroachment of Russia. Or Taiwanese nationalism as a kind of bulwark against China. All of these are afforded by the US. During the Cold War, the USA and indeed the USSR funded many different nationalist uprisings against the old European imperialist powers. The old European empires were on the back foot, they were on the decline, and the newly emerging empires, Russia and America, were funding nationalist movements against the old empires.
And that's not entirely accurate either. In fact, America especially went to war on behalf of the old European empires. Korea and Vietnam stand out distinctly. Why did America go to war in Vietnam? Well, because the Vietnamese had kicked out the French. So the Americans went in there to basically reclaim territory that the French had. Now, you might say that they came in there to fill a vacuum. Okay, fair, whatever, sure. They were going to take it for themselves and exclude the French. Yeah, maybe. But either way, they went in there because the French had failed. They went in there to replace the French one way or the other. Same thing in Israel, with the Seven Country War, all that stuff. Yeah, America got involved because suddenly the European outpost in the Middle East was in trouble. Same thing in Korea. Britain wants to go into Korea. Why? Well, they want to make an inroad. It was Britain and America went to war in Korea, along with Australia and many of the British Commonwealth. People forget that. It wasn't an American war. In fact, people never talk about Korea. I'm going to do a deep dive, I think, starting next year into Korea. It's been standing out as this weird little place, this weird little dark place in the world, where it's like, what happened during the Korean War? Why don't people talk about it more? There's no propaganda films about it. Very few. The Manchurian Candidate and a few other little things came out of Korea. But that was this sort of like leftover after the World War II. And it was a major war that claimed a lot of lives, and no one really talks about it. Interesting. So yeah, no, he's all the books. I'm no academic. I have no big, whatever. But he's just using rhetoric here.
I think the US backed over 20 such movements, according.
And his rhetoric exposes blind spots. It's never Europe. Europe's on the back end. Europe failed in World War II. America became ascendant. So all the problems in the world post World War II, I guess, are America's problems. Or it's America's fault. No one else. No one else had sovereignty. Only America. Only America, Russia, and China apparently have sovereignty. Because that's essentially what empire means. Empire, or nationalism, or nation, or civilization, pick your word, essentially they all mean the same thing in this context. All rely on one thing: sovereignty. Who is sovereign? Because who is sovereign gets to make decisions, gets to act independently of anybody else. Essentially. It might have considerations, but ultimately, if I am sovereign, I get to choose the exceptions. I get to do what I want to do. Now, a global system gets rid of all sovereignty completely. No one can really do what they want to do because it all has to be run by committee. But that just makes the global system, this one world government or whatever you want to call it, into the sovereign unit. So they're acting independently of other people's interests. They're only acting within their own interests. They can code that as everybody's interests as much as they want, but essentially it becomes their interest. It's a separate group. So whatever term you use, empire, nation, civilization, is a term for sovereignty. Because it relies on it. You can't have any of these things without some sort of sovereignty, personal or otherwise, external or internal. Now, the only thing that I would say is different between, let's say, an empire and a nation is its direction. Nations are directed internally, and empires are directed externally. Empires externalize their power as far as they can make it. They expand their sphere of influence to as many areas as possible. A nation withholds that sovereignty onto itself. So it's not looking to expand its sovereignty into other territories. It controls it for itself. And when a nation begins to expand that sovereignty over other areas, or attempts to, that's its attempt to become an empire. That's the distinction, right? It's directional, not systematic. Because ultimately, the difference between an empire and a nation is really just scale. And we can disperse both those terms and just call it a civilization. Western civilization is a civilization that spans an immense amount of the world. All of Europe, Americas, most of Pacifica, right? In fact, in any place that adopts it, doesn't even have to be Western. Russia is much more of a Western civilization than it is an Eastern civilization.
To this chap, Ryan Griffiths, over 20 nationalist movements during the Cold War funded by America against the against the imperial powers. In America, obviously, in the Soviet case, obviously, it came with, a kind of communist flavour. Although the communists also used nationalism for their cause, as Stalin did, as Mao did, Ho Chi Minh did in the Vietnam War against the Americans, which again really was a battle against the old European powers. In that case, the French Empire. So yeah, so you can see that nationalism as a bottom-up.
The French didn't have an empire. Excuse me. The French didn't really have an empire under classic. I mean, they had under colonialization. And again, if you're simply saying that an empire is expansive, so an empire has territories that are outside of out of the home district, right? The seat of Rome is in Rome, but Rome is obviously in many other places, right? It's under the authority of Rome. So you could say that if you have a nation state, let's say, or a state that has territories all over the place that are subservient to that state, therefore it's an empire. If that's what he's going with, then we can say, yes, the French had an empire, the Belgians had an empire, the British and all these other people had empires, technically. But that's really not what we would say when we talk about Byzantium or Rome, or we talk about even the British or American empires, if there are such things or were such things. It's not just how much territory it controls, it's how much power it exerts on the world itself. The British had an empire because the majority of the world right now thinks and speaks in English. English is the most common language, still to this day. And you maybe you can run the numbers and you say, actually, because of Africa and South America and stuff like that, it's actually Spanish by X percentage, or it's actually it's Mandarin because the population. Yeah, okay, cool. No one speaks Mandarin outside of China, really. That's the thing. There's more Chinese people who learn English than there are English people who learn Mandarin. That's the difference. If you see people complaining about the American empire, some of that on X from other places, from other nationalities, and they're doing it in English, and it's not just a translation thing, and they're actually writing it and speaking in English, that means they have English in their head. That means they've been colonized completely. That's power. That's empire. When Latin was the default language of the world, or Greek was the default language of the world, that's empire. See? C'est une différence. If French was spoken widely by the majority of the people in the world, you could say, well, the French had an empire. How many people speak French, really? More than not, right? More than no one. Vietnamese people speak French. A lot of Africans speak French, sure. Spanish, same thing. So these were empires at some point. I don't think the Vietnamese were shirking off the French Empire, though. They were shirking off colonialism, which is essentially the end of empire, the liberalization of the concept of empire.
Sentiment. I wouldn't say it's a delusion. I would say people do feel nationalistic. They do feel pride in their country. But often that is indulged, or that is played on by elites for a specific purpose and a wider geostrategic purpose.
Divisions are always useful. This has been the British model for a very long time. Divide and control within the division. It's why I think that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The people who did the pew-pews was City of London and used Azov. I've detailed this in past shows. Go check those out. Buy membership. They're in the membership portal. $2. It's easy. I won't really waste too much time talking about that. But the reason is that when you see division and control through division, that's a British tactic. Not saying other people couldn't do it, but that's a classic hallmark of the British. So when you see those things erupt, Middle East and many other places, even there in America, right? left versus right, all this kind of discord. That's a British tactic. That's an Anglo tactic. Just is. Okay. The cauldron is a Russian tactic. Tactic. Ooh, two beers and getting saucy. We could ascribe certain things to certain nations and so, yeah, sure. But that's also a British thing. Malaka says, I would say the British learned it from the Spanish. Sure. Okay. But for the last 400 years, that's been a British tactic. And they've excelled at it. If they've learned it from the Spanish, they took it to new aims, to new heights. And essentially here, AA is not saying anything here. Like, there's nothing here that's actionable. What are you going to do about an empire? Because the question is really sovereignty, personal or national or group preference. When you say white nationalist, really what they're saying is they want sovereignty for this group. Black nationalists, Islam nationalists, whatever, right? They want sovereignty. They want the right to determine and make choices for this group. That's what that comes down to. When every time you hear nationalism, just think sovereignty. Either you have it or you don't. But if you don't, you want it. It's like leverage. So you gain leverage in order to obtain sovereignty. That's the win condition. There has to be the win condition. To tie it back to what we started off with the show about. I don't know. If I was part of the Young Republican Leadership Committee, I would basically be saying, look, we want sovereignty. We don't have it. We don't have the ability to do what the left is going to do with this political piece back to the left. Hassan Piker is going to be brought down by shocking his dog, not by his political positions. Okay? He's already losing real support because of a dog, a mistreatment of an animal, not his political positions, which is a bitter white pill. Again, that shows there's some decency still beating the heart of the West. Sometimes we're just going to make a hard stand and go, nope, no children, no animals, man. Thank God. But that's if Hassan Piker gets brought down over a dog, how delicious will that be? And also tell all these people, it's like, look, man, you ain't got nothing. All your courses and all your fine thinking and your theology and your theory, and all your high-minded positioning don't mean nothing. Because what really brings a guy down is mistreatment of an animal. And who's been front and center on this is Asmongold. Patriot Gold, as Matthew Erickson has talked about. Who's way more powerful than Norman will ever be. Ever. And here's the reason why. Asmongold has built and developed a multi-million subscriber and viewership by being authentic. I've watched Asmongold's, let's say, worldview change as the world's changed, as it changed for me and many others. But it was authentic. He went through different periods. It wasn't just to get views. In fact, he risked a whole bunch of things. He put it on the line. That's why he's more effective. People respond to authenticity. And I know I've seen this in the chat, and I'm sure, I guarantee you, we're going to hear about the defense of AAs, that he's playing a character, he's playing the heel, he's doing a heel run, and he's going to come back as a babyface, right? This is all part of his plan, this is all part of his game. If that's true, it's still damning. Because it means he's playing a game. We're no longer in a game. This is a war. It's not time for bobbleheads in the back and all that stuff. It's that time's done. It's over. It's finished. The Charlie Kirk incident should really ratify that in your brain. It is later than you think. Hasten, therefore, to do the work of God. Get it right. Now. And a minute.
Okay, your nationalism is probably the pawn of some other power trying to do something most of the time. Even in the case of, like Iran, for example, Iran has tried to kind of go it alone against the great Satan and against the little Satan, Israel, okay? But in the process, it has found itself folded into Russian power and Chinese power. So it still ends up being an imperial pawn in a greater chess game.
Sovereignty. Again, is Iran sovereign? Was it ever sovereign? Could it ever be sovereign?
If
you're going to say that Israel only exists on behalf of the global American empire, then Iran, in its current configuration, post kicking out the Shah, which was a British plant, by the way, again, nice little dodge from the British Empire, but sure, whatever. Well, you kick out the British influence, you're going to get more influence because you have a slight little window in time to create and maintain sovereignty. And if you can't maintain that because of your connections and affiliations, then the other sovereign nations will take over for you. I don't have a grudge against AA, Julio. If you watch the entirety of my show, then you'll see that I don't have a grudge. People put this in front of me and ask me to comment, so I'm commenting. I have no grudges. I don't care. I don't care the way people think people should care. I don't. What I care about is you going to church and talking to a priest and getting good with God. That's what I care about. What I'm trying to do is break your frame constantly. You want to maintain it and hold on to it, that's fine. Find comfort in it if you can. It's nihilistic. It's the end of things. It's too late in the game or in the war and in the world itself to hold on to false beliefs. It's way too late for that.
Really, the history of nationalism proper, when properly considered. Soviet and US covert regime changes during the period of
glory to God in all things.
Decolonization, post-colonial period of the Cold War, they funded 64 covert regime changes.
Charlemagne says, well said, we must speak plainly and mean what we say. Now is not the time for games. Game's over. Game's over. Game was over a long time ago. Game was over in 2016. Game was certainly over when Charlie Kirk got shot. Get serious, guys. If you want to play this, if you want to be in this, if you want to be in these spheres and think these thoughts, the choice is yours. You can go watch Marvel movies, man, or whatever's on Netflix or something. You can just go do that. Play some games. Hey, we're gonna play some Power Washing tomorrow. Whatever, fine. Do your thing. This doesn't have to be for you. Buckle in. Do your thing, man. Goon. I don't care. So again, this whole, I got a grudge. I don't have a grudge. People put this in front of me saying, look, AA is doing the thing you said people are going to start doing. So I'm going to talk about it. Because people then hold on to things and project these people and these ideas And it's like, look, man, you got to know what time it is. This is not the time to talk about empire or wonderful things we're going to do in 100 years. No, you got to get your shit figured out right now. Because they're going to come for you. They're coming for all of us. If you hold any idea outside of a very narrow band of allowable opinions, they're going to get rid of you. One way, shape, or form. The digital gulag will exist. Now is your time to do something about it. And even if that thing is going to church, going to liturgy, talking to a priest, learning discernment, getting that tradition, getting your head out your spiritual ass and starting to see things straight, then that is the mission. That becomes the calling of your life. And hopefully you pass it on to your kids. Go have kids, get married, have kids. Sacrifice, suffer, and do it with a smile on your face. That's the calling. That's your life. That's what this is right now. Get it straight. Octavian, 999, thank you so much. We are living the symptoms of the game being over. Yeah. Well, again, there's a game and the game. I'll get EM on. We'll talk about it.
Between them in a very short space of time. Many of them were overtly nationalist movements. And, the Ukraine example is, they've given billions upon billions, $175 billion since 2022 given to Ukraine. Russians have given lots of money to some of their proxy forces around the world as well. So, yeah, I mean, in such a case, in such a situation, that's the actual reality of things. What is your nationalism? Your nationalism is a ploy. You're basically being played by somebody else. This is why during the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, which is still ongoing, I was always reluctant to kind of come down on the Ukrainian cause, because it's obvious it's being propped up. It's obvious that it's, a stratagem by empire. Okay, now you could say, well,
and which empire? Again, well, just ignore the whole British thing completely, because it's easier. It's down to sovereignty. Do Ukrainians have the right to be sovereign? Does Israel have the right to exist? Is code for, does Israel have the right to be sovereign? Julio, $4.99, just a little support for our guy. Thank you so much. I want to break your frame. I can present you with the ammunition. I can light the fire, but you got to break it yourself. You got to challenge it. And everywhere it leads. And sometimes that means that your sacred cows and guys you like, you got to go, hey, I liked you for a while. Thank you for your ideas. Thank you for getting me to this place. Appreciate it. Bye now. Because all they're doing is substantiating a frame. They're in the frame. They can't think outside of it. The only thing that allows you to break a frame, really break the frame completely, is God, is religion, is a tradition and a people. As P. Quinones once said, collectivize or die. People hear that and go, oh, communism. No. You got to get yourself a community. You got to surround yourself with people you will fast with. Never feast with those you will not fast with, or who will not fast with you. Surround yourself with people who will be with you in the hard, bad times. And then ask yourself, often, will some people, like Norman over here, is Norman going to fast with you? Is he? You really think Norman's going to fast with you? If you're an American, especially, do you think Norman's going to fast with you? No. Norman's going to do what's good for Norman. And I'm not judging him on that. I really am not. People hear that and go, "Oh, you're obsessed or something." No. I'm just calling it out. You got to be clear about these things. Because if you're surrounding yourself with people who will not fast with you, then their support means nothing. Their likes mean nothing. Their viewership and all the rest of their ideas mean nothing. It's all self-serving at the end of the day. It all substantiates the frame. Charlemagne says, I'm being afraid of the UK government knocking, but if that is just the case, then why play at all? Exactly. Just quit the table. Be neither hot nor cold, nor in the middle. I spit you from my mouth, not because you're hot nor cold, but because you're tepid. Sensible centrists, right? Here's the thing. You don't want to sacrifice your channel. You built this thing. You've made many sacrifices to build this thing. All the hours of work, all the things. You've built this great thing, this vehicle. You don't give up the vehicle. You just turn the vehicle onto a new road. Right? No ethics. No ethos. You need to have religion to have ethics. You need it. The inverse reality is, and this is why liberty, being a adjunct of the liberal frame, is Luciferian to its core. Liberty, and here's a word concept fallacy of the day. Liberty oftentimes gets coded as freedom. These two things are not the same thing. Freedom is often found in servitude. When you serve God, truly, justly, you become free. You become free of all the evils of the world. Or you become detached. You're given the ability to become free of them. Of the things that will pull you down, which will lead to derivations, to derelictions, to we know what. Ask AA here about his transgendered friends or his gay friends, right? And he was supporting those people long before he got the call. We all got the call, by the way. That's what Charlie Kirk was. That was the call. Now you make your decision. If you're a small channel like myself, the worst they can do really is just delete the channel. Get to someone like him, well, they could do something more with him. So, as I said, I'm not besmirching Norman. This might be a good tactical move. But like Charlemagne says here, just delete the channel. You're really that concerned. Go make some other thing. Talk about movies. If you're going to veer the channel into something completely away from what you were doing before, go talk about movies. I think he tried doing that. I think he tried making a video game channel, so maybe that didn't work out. But make Dark Souls videos. I see them all the time. There's major channels you could just go talk about, go talk with Nerd Neurotic and Mahler and the was it Casual Drinker? You could just do that. Wrestling content. Yeah. You could just go do wrestling, man. Oops. And I get it. I went from last year talking almost exclusively about political theory, and now, because of my own personal situation, moving into orthodoxy, now the show's moving to orthodoxy. And it's good, and I've lost many people, and that's fine. It's what you're going to do. You sacrifice, you build something, and you put it out there. Hey, I'd like Mahler too. I was watching every EFAP for many, many years. In fact, EFAP was a big influence into how I wanted to construct Friend or Fed, that series. We have a new series coming up hopefully soon. But again, these are not criticisms just for criticism's sake. there's many options you have. If you're concerned about your safety, you can just drop the politics altogether, and it will suck. You will lose a lot of people, but you'll gain in 3-4 years, and you'll be fine. But if I'm going to guess that what AA would like to be is the next Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan's got to retire sometime, and I'm sure that he would like to take that spot. So this is a triangulation.
As some people do, as Richard Spencer has, what he just supports the NATO empire. He supports that. He thinks that's good. I'm more ambivalent about the current empire than him. But I'm realistic to know that the kind of romantic nationalism that is trying to be G'd up in the Ukrainian cause it's a play. It's another pro wrestling scenario where
Yeah, but it's not a play to the 2 million Ukrainians who died. It's certainly not it's not a play. It wasn't a play for many of the Ukrainians who got involved in the war, period. It wasn't a play for many Ukrainians who had been annexed by Russia for 250 years. At least that was the history they were given. It wasn't a play for them to suddenly be given in 1991 a chance at being a sovereign nation and making its own choices for itself. And the people responded to that. And people, dysphoria, all over the West, from Winnipeg and Toronto and Chicago and many other places, going back to Ukraine to teach Ukrainians Ukrainian, to bring back the church, to reestablish it as an actual real country, a sovereign nation, country, civilization, whatever you want to. Obviously, it didn't work out. It's now become the victim of a human sacrifice ritual. Go check out me and Jim talking about this in the last stream. No, I'm calling him out for having a tranny friend, and as far as I can tell, if you are saying you're right wing and you're promoting transgenderism, you're not right wing.
being played. If you have a look, between 1946 and 2000, America has intervened 81 times in foreign elections. That is, other countries are trying to have democratic elections, and America doesn't like the outcome that the people are going to vote for, so they intervene to ensure that the force that they want wins. 81 times between 1946 and 2000. Now, if your government literally has come about due to a foreign intervention by the American empire, can you really be a nationalist for that nation? You're just a vassal state. And this is one of the reasons why I've been at pains to try to demonstrate to people that Britain is a vassal.
Well, hang on a second. America came to creation because of being a vassal state of the British Empire. What? Oops. What are you talking about? Also, post-Soviet Union, there was a whole bunch of new nations created out of nowhere. Like Poland hadn't been its own nation state for quite some time, even predating the Soviet Union, and now is the most dominant economic zone in all of Europe. Huh? What? Who? What? I'm not an academic. I have no letters behind my name, but even I can read and tie my shoes. It's amazing.
Of the American empire. So in some ways it's a nonsense to think about British interests separate from the role it plays within the greater American empire, just in the interest of realism. This is something clearly that Tony Blair understands, something a lot of you understand. But the practical reality is you're not going to be able to bust out of it through nationalism unless your nationalism gets an even more powerful backer. But then Britain is reduced to the status of one of these pawn nations. And I actually think it's going on right now. I think the Civil War narrative is being pushed by foreign powers. I've said this before.
Right. It's always foreign powers. It's never Britain. You know, people blame the Jays for always being the perpetual victim, right? It's never them, it's everyone else. It's always someone else. Even when it's them, it's someone else. They drove us to it. How could we stop it? You know who the biggest bitches in the world are, really? Are the British. The biggest didn't do nothings is the British. My goodness. Every single time, as anyone ever brings anything, a legitimate or illegitimate or any kind of complaint, any historical, current, whatever, to the British, you're always going to find some Brit who goes, wow, it's not us. It was the climate. It was those damn Americans. It's the global American empire, you know, not the British Empire that spanned the globe. No, we just gave it up in 1945, mysteriously, for reasons. Because we couldn't financially deal with it. What? I don't know. Why? Huh? What? It doesn't make sense. It never made sense. It only makes sense because you hear it and you never question it. You go along with it. And as long as you go along with it, it's fine. But why, for example, does the entire world in general all look like the British Parliament? They all use some varying forms of the British parliamentary system. Weird. That's power, isn't it? That you can go anywhere in the world, even in China, even communist China still uses, essentially, elements of a Westphalian system. Dear. Modern democracy, the way that we conceive democracy in the West, is a British invention. Not democracy, the idea, that's Greek, sure, but how it works in sort of like districts and zones and voting in Congress people, which are just MPs and all the rest, that's all British. British common law, all of it. British. English. Everyone speaks English. Sorry, Norman. I think you're missing, you're purposely just skipping over who might be culpable. Maybe, possibly, just a little bit.
And they'll use your genuine nationalist sentiment for their ends. Actually happening right now. Actually happening. I've been watching it happen. I've commented on it. You can go back and watch those videos. That's really what is happening. Foreign actors are trying to foment civil conflict in the UK. They realise there are fissures. They realise there are real issues. And they think they can profit off the genuine anger of British patriots at this moment. Probably work too. Nationalism is a very strong motivating force. When the state runs out of options, it always turns to nationalism. Always. As a final resort. All communists in their writings admit that nationalism is a stronger driver to drive people to pick up a gun and die or fight than communism in the abstract.
Yes, someone's saying he's right on this though. Yeah, again, I'm not disagreeing with him entirely in theory. If you have a desire for sovereignty, and there's people out there who have leverage on your sovereignty, they will use your sovereignty. They will use your desire against you. They will promise you the sovereignty, and give you something else. The hardest pill for me to swallow with the Ukraine-Russia situation was Ukrainian sovereignty is no longer on the table. Maybe it never was. They had a window in time, they squandered it, they didn't get it. They could have become Poland, they didn't, they became Ukraine. And you can say, well, that's because of Russian intervention or because of British intervention or mismanagement and all the rest of it. Sure, yeah, absolutely. But the problem is that you keep looking for a scapegoat here. It's the this, it's the that, it's the elites, it's the this, it's the bankers. They're people, they're human beings. Human beings can be held in and constrained, essentially, by a worldview. If you want to change the people, you change the worldview. That's what's ahead of us. That's why you act locally. You create the groundswell beneath you. That will never work because they're in control of everything. Well, if that's what you believe, then why are you talking about anything ever? To Charlemagne's point, if you believe that the entire system is rigged and controlled by the nebulous, evil people, and there's no chance or no hope of anything ever happening, although we've been given an example by Jesus Christ and the Christians who overturned Rome in 300 years, the thing is, it's not possible in your lifetime, and that's the whole big freaking point, isn't it? It's got to be about you. When you make it all about you, and you make it about my lifetime, and it has to happen in my time and with my name on it, and somehow connected by me, and my ideas have led to these things, when it all becomes a point of pride because you have no ethics, guess what? You lead into despair. The merchants of despair act on you because they play on your pride. What is sovereignty in the end of the day? What are the passions that keep a hold of it? What fuels it? Pride, vainglory, lust, avarice, all the good prides. Degeneracy is held together by these things. When you begin to bring death to the world, when you begin to bring death to the passions, you get, guess what? Freedom. You must liberate yourself. The true final revolution is a revolution against the self. That which holds you to it. Blaming others and creating the spooky wookies only plays into their game. So the slop merchants, like I said, become subsidiaries of the merchants of despair. They don't want your solutions. They're not interested in solutions. No solutions ever offered. What are you going to do? Tony Blair's in control and all these foreign nationalists. Okay, the global American empire is screwing you. What are you going to do? Not buy hamburgers? Don't go to McDonald's? What are you going to do? What's your game plan exactly? Huh? Because you're worried about running out of scones, aren't you? Because you want your viewership. You don't want to sacrifice. Strangely enough, in his worldview, because he's an atheist, he believes that nothing means nothing. We're all one cosmic accident, but you're very scared of dying or suffering or having your child suffer, aren't you? That would call into question this idea of what is good. If all we are just accidental organisms, then nothing bad that happens to you is bad. Scones are good with clotted cream, exactly. I agree. I like a good scone. I like sleeping in a nice bed. I'm a slave to the flesh as well. Do you think an academic agent has a Funko Pop collection? I don't know if he does, but he should. He should replace all that with Funko Pops. Go join Neurotic. No shame in it. Talk about the latest Marvel movie. It's fine. You don't have to do this. You don't have to live this way. Constant messages show. Break the frame. Don't live like this. Do something.
James Burnham, in The Managerial Revolution, talks about how during the early phases of World War II, the Germans had no problem getting people enlisted. They had no problem with volunteers because people wanted to fight for the fatherland. British.
Oh, here we go. I got 4 more super chats to go, and we'll do a stream tomorrow, doing some power washing and listening to Alex Jones talking with Tucker Carlson about the globalist death cult, transdimensional globalists, little hats, we're like fish. We'll be talking about them tomorrow. But it's only we hit that goal. We hit that goal, I'll do the stream.
Establishment, French establishment, and American establishment had trouble recruiting in a time of mass unemployment. Why? Because people were not motivated to fight for abstract notions like liberty or justice or capitalism or, whatever else, whatever other slogans they threw at them. They weren't strong, whereas nationalism was strong. That's why Stalin had...
But all these things are metaphysical claims, AA. At the end of the day, and this is your problem being an atheist, you can't deal, or nominalist, you can't deal with a metaphysical claim. Whether it be glory or heroism or nationalism or unity or whatever the claim is, it's a metaphysical claim. Whiteness doesn't really exist in the sense that every single group is going to fall into that group eventually. I saw this happen in Canada. Live in Quebec. If you're not pure laine, it doesn't matter if you're white or European. If you're not French enough or specifically Quebecois enough, you're not pure laine. You're not part of the in group. You're on the out group. These will always happen. Differentiation happens. It's a human thing. It's part of the fallen nature. Sure, whatever you want to define it as. But it's a metaphysical claim. All of it. LG Brandon Walsh. Good to see you back, my friend. LG says, you earned it in your bag tonight. The fast feast line was a bar, and I'll teach it to my kids. $10. Appreciate you. When you're dealing with metaphysical claims, yes, people will always fight. People will always ascend to a metaphysical claim. Transcendence is a desire to be more than oneself. But if you've been telling people that you're not anything but mush, and there is no hope, and there is no greater thing, and we're being controlled by the Jays or the this or the that or the whatever group, sure, if that's your messaging, guess what? No one's going to fight for you. No one's going to care about you. The night of the long pillow comes for us all then. How do we switch it? Go to liturgy, talk to a priest, become part of a community, sacrifice, give something, do something. I'll keep saying the same damn things over and over again. Because now I'm past the point of being nice or trying to appeal to people. Someone asked me recently, someone I love and respect, to convince them. I'm like, I'm not here to convince you, man. It's here. The vengeful son is here. People's desire for violence is spilling over. And if you don't see it and you want to deny it and you want to poo-poo it and because it came from me and you want to reframe it, go ahead, reframe it. Give it another name. I don't give a shit. Whatever is good for you. Go ahead, do it. Ultimately, end of day, brass tacks. This is the war. You're in it. You're either an active combatant or you're a casualty. Which you want to be.
To move to nationalism to get Russians motivated to fight that war. Every leader ultimately knows this. So it's from the elite point of view, it's powerful to get plebs to do what you want them to do. Okay? But zoom out a little bit and you'll see that unless you're a powerful empire in and of yourself, it's almost pointless to be a nationalist. It's almost pointless because you're just never going to You're never going to escape the raw reality of this.
Yes, it's basically pointless, almost pointless, almost pointless. Holding out a little bit of hope. So, if you're not an empire, if you haven't rolled the geographical dice and lucked out on being part of an empire, you're screwed. That's the message. Eat your scones while they exist. I don't know. What's the operation here? Anything? Nothing. Just wait for it all to collapse and maybe rebuild from the ruins, I guess. Do you know how to do anything? Not really. $5 from Cool Dude, appreciate you. I've been drawn to orthodoxy, God bless, after not attending any church for years due to many people's efforts, including myself. Thank you. On YT, God bless. Yeah, thank you. Amen. I will, if you've been watching this show over the last 4 whatever years, I've gone from observing to participating to desiring nothing but Christ. Like, there's a line from one of Father Seraphim Rose's books when he said, he broke down almost in his heart was broken and he just called out. He wants God. He just give me God. And I know that feeling where it's the only thing that makes sense anymore. The only thing that's like, if this is, I look at my life and it's like, I've had all the things, or I have all the things. I have all the things you're supposed to have, and I'm doing all the things you're supposed to do and all that. And it's still not enough. It's still empty. You're still craving because you've been in this spiritual fast. And now we get to feast. Go to liturgy, talk to a priest. Get good with God. And it is a feast. It's glory. You suddenly feel at home. And all the things that are worrying you and all the things that are keep coming down on you, pressuring you, trying to draw you into despair, trying to just draw you into this point of nihilism where, hey, if you're not part of an empire, I guess you're screwed. Get good with the mud people. Learn to adapt, I guess, or something like that. Just change your language. Fit in. Don't rock any boats. Fuck that. Fuck your boats. Tired of your boats. Tired of your frame. Tired of the lies. I'm tired of the deceit. I'm tired by the rules. I'm tired of sitting here and watching it. And having no recourse. And having that anxiety and knowing that your ass is out in the wind. What do you do? Who do you have? Who do you really have? So if you don't have people who are conjoined, who are joined in, who are in communion with something higher than themselves, with a purpose that is not just them and here and now and what we're doing, going to church and having the fellowship afterwards and the coffee hour. No, we're joined in something that's eternal, that is much bigger than ourselves. That is the bricks that we use to build, both symbolically and physically. If you don't have that, you have nothing. That's what was taken from us. And that's what we take back. Cyberchud 499. I think you're the only channel untangling these Christmas lights. Jason A released this series to resounding, huh? Oh. And I know, I get it, right? And his defenders are going to say he's kayfabe. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. But I don't think so. I clocked this in a long time ago. I like me some Don the Pleb. And I watched A throw Don the Pleb under the bus. I watched him throw a lot of the other people to the bus. A lot of names in the chat tonight. A lot of people watching this. I'm sure a lot of people watching this in the future will either say something or not say something. And this guy's no good, man. And when you start realizing it and realize that it's not just, and it's not just him. There are many others who filled a vacuum because they could and promoted certain ideas, and the ideas can be used. God bless. Right? Curtis Yarvin brings up some ideas that I think are very useful. If useful in nothing else, not from something I'm going to use, but to understand what other people are thinking. It's a weather pattern. I'm a weatherman. I'm telling you which way the wind blows. Do with that what you will. That being said, when you get into these ideas that these guys are going to tell you everything and be able to discern anything, they can't. They have no ethics. None. So they'll turn on a dime, man. And that leaves your ass out in the wind? Too bad. They've got you thinking and saying a whole bunch of stuff, and as soon as it becomes unpopular, as soon as it becomes risky for them, they'll leave you in the frying pan. Never feast with those you would not fast with, or those who would not fast with you. And again, I have nothing against them. It's not personal. It's not a judgment in terms of damn him, or I forgive him. Go ahead. It's easy for me. It's not personal. But I feel I have a responsibility to anyone who watches this channel to try to break that frame. Because I'm trying to break that frame. I know how hard it is. I know how much it will feel like a humiliation, but it's actually just it's a true humbling. And to get to acceptance, you have to pass through humility. And humility comes in many levels. And it's very difficult for the modern man. Because you feel like you're already brought low. And you have been. In many ways, you are eating the food of the pigs. And that's why you have to have that realization, like the prodigal son, get up and return to the Father. To repent and rebuild. Return, repent, rebuild. If I say nothing else, if I've given you nothing else in my entire life, use those three things. Return to the Father, repent of your sins, and rebuild. Has to happen. Will happen. It's going to happen. We've just got it started.
What's the best that you can hope for, really? The best you can hope for, as I've talked about, is a devolved, self-governed unit, something like that, which may be organised along ethnic lines. Maybe. This might be, this, in the current setup, if the elites decided, right, well, rather than try to have this forced integration model, which is never going to work, we're actually going to do multiculturalism in the manner of the old millet system, right? There's a black area with a black tribal leader. There's a white area with a white tribal leader. There's an Indian area with an Indian tribal leader. They all report in to the sovereign, right?
That's the history of Britain. AA. The Welsh, the Celts, the Britons were all separate areas, kingdoms, that landlords, lords of the land, who gave up a part of their sovereignty to a king, who led the entire kingdom, who united the kingdoms, and they just gave part of their sovereignty to this king who would rule the kingdoms on their behalf to stop conflict. Mimetic conflict. The more alike people are, the more rivalrous they become. So you have a bunch of landlords who have a bunch of armies and peoples who are always in conflict. So they say, to end these conflicts, we're going to take a 10% of our sovereignty and put it into this office of the king. and the king will become the arbiter of sovereignty itself. They become the seat of sovereignty. This is the importance of kings. This is why monarchy and hierarchy is important. You don't get there without any other system. Doesn't exist. Can't work. That's why it's reducing to tribalism. But even when it splits apart to tribalism, the tribes will then need a chieftain. They will elect one over time, because that's how hierarchies work. It's how human beings do. So the only question is, are you going to submit to the authority? Are you going to try to make sure that whatever the future authority is for yourself or your children or your lineage will be a proper authority maintained and informed by a proper morality? If that's not how it is, then they'll be ruled by some J or whatever, someone of questionable moral standings. And the only way you can assure their moral standing is by tying them to a tradition, which is upheld by a religion. And if you're the West, that's Christianity. Get your head out your ass.
To the Sultan. But whatever goes on in those areas, in those enclaves, is up to the local leader.
Will Emanuel says a very good thing. Speaking of elites, become a member. Become a member. $2 gets you in. $25 is the preferred member status. That's where you become the true elite. The Excelsior Club is the elite club. But for all the rest of you, $2. That's it. Give me $2. Easy. Or send it over on Streamlabs. Send it over on PayPal. That's nice. I like to have it in my pocket. Either way. Like, subscribe, share. Do the things. Do the free stuff. That's the Mironchuckle zone. The Mironchuckles do the free stuff. The Mironchuds, give me $2 and send some money any other way. And the Mironchads, my friend, Mironchads do all the above. They like, subscribe, they share, they tell people they let the people know where we're at, and they send me money, and they support, and they're in the chat, and they show up every time. Don Browning just sent 5 Mironchuck gifts. Don Browning, by the way, is one of the greatest Australians ever existing. She is a Mironchad of all Mironchads. God bless you, Don. Okay, let's get through this last little bit, and we'll sign off for the evening.
They haven't done that as of yet. Okay, maybe at some point in the future they will, because that's a model, like I've talked about, that can endure for hundreds of years. Whereas what we're doing now doesn't really endure. As we're seeing, it kind of falls apart.
Look, Charlemagne said, maybe he's doing something good for Britain, and that's fine. And whenever Charlie only cares about the UK, I care about Australia only because I live here and so that I'm in a different kind of zone altogether. That being said, it's like, look, mate, Britain's being invaded by the Muslims. You have areas in Britain where they're putting Christians in jail for praying, and yet allowing Muslim prayer to exist without any kind of question. You got to address that. That's a spiritual war. It's literally a religious war. And right now, AA, and maybe his Persian influence is speaking, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have a problem with the Muslims because he could maybe get coded that way. I don't know. But either way, that's your problem right now in the UK. And if nationalism of a kind, Christian nationalism, white nationalism, British nationalism, something nationalism, is going to be the calling card, it's going to be the force against the invasion of Islam into your country, which, by the way, you should be concerned about. You got a daughter? Should be concerned about that. No guarantee that the Islam being substantiated in your country is going to be the secular kind. Are you going to secularize them over time? Sure, maybe in 40, 50 years, they'll just turn out to be nominal, Muslims, Muslims in name, cultural Muslims. Sure, maybe. Or maybe they become you become Afghanistan. Oops.
Because at the moment what they're doing is they're kind of favouring, or they have been favouring minority groups over the majority, and that's kind of not a recipe that lasts.
Actually, it does. It can last up to 80 years.
All right, I think that'll do on nationalism. I've kind of said this quite a few times before. This is
Okay. Basically, is this. Word concept fallacies notwithstanding. Let me take this off here. It's not updating. Word concepts fallacies notwithstanding. Right now in 2025, you're going to need a calling card, a frame, a word, a thing, an ideology, a vehicle. If it's not religious, because you're not calling people to become religious, then it'll have to be something secularist. Nationalism is the secular version of a religious side. A discernment, a setting apart, a border. This people group versus this people group. Now, I'm all for destroying the dialectic. The only way you destroy the dialectic is breaking the frame. The dialectic upholds the liberal frame. So if you want to get free of the dialectic, you got to break the frame. You want to do that? I'm your friend, man. I'm your bud. You don't want to do that? Well, guess what? You get what the frame gives you. And right now, if you're in the UK, it's giving you virulent Islam. Enjoy. Oh, and Hinduism as well. You're becoming Singapore. But whereas Singapore was set up to maintain three desperate groups in a region, because they kind of existed there before and they're just trying to figure out a way to best civilize those groups, you come from a civilization that's being transformed into a different civilization altogether. And maybe that means something to you, maybe it doesn't. But the core principles of Western civilization have been Christianity. You need it. All the other things you like and you rely upon go away without it. Decency, law, community. Doesn't have to come down to skin, by the way. I've said this on the show many times and drawn heat for it, but I'm not a racialist at all in terms of skin color. Right? I'm not an ethno guy. I am a cultural guy, though. And I certainly am now a massively religious guy. You want to call me a religious bigot? Here we go. Because without a clear idea of religion, tradition, people, region, culture, identity, language, history, without these things functioning, along with a ruler and a religion that substantiates those things, that all these things are operating in tandem and substantiating each other constantly. Without that, you do not have a civilization. If you don't have a civilization, guess what? Everything else doesn't matter. Does not matter. Because we are civilizationalists. We exist in a civilizational frame. We build. Why? Because we do. That's what we do. We're builders. It's how we function. It's in our DNA. It's what we're called to do. And anything that blocks us from doing that is enemy. Cannot exist. We cannot coexist with the primals. We can't coexist with people who don't want to build and maintain civilization. It doesn't work. It's not their civilization versus ours. It's civilization itself. Period. And you're either in the frame or you're out of it. And that civilizational frame doesn't need liberalism. It's not required. Break it. For yourself and for others and for your children and for your generations. That's where we're at now, folks. All right. I've said my piece.